What is good, YouTube? Quinway basketball analysis coming to y'all with a Clippers discussion. I did a Brooklyn Nets one yesterday. Kawhi Leonard, the Finals MVP with the Spurs, and the Toronto Raptors. A guy that did have a lot of pride. He felt like he didn't need much to win a title in LA for the Clippers. He could have went to the Lakers and joined up with LeBron, but he decided not to. That year was the bubble season where it was the Clippers or the Lakers to a lot of people that was going to battle it out for the title. Obviously, the Denver Nuggets ended up upsetting the Los Angeles Clippers that year, and the Lakers ended up beating the Nuggets in the conference finals, ended up winning against the Miami Heat in the NBA finals. Last year, the Lakers ended up crashing and burning to the Phoenix Suns in the first round. Kawhi Leonard went out against Utah, and they ended up getting past Utah without him, becoming the first time the Clippers made it out of the second round to the conference finals in franchise history. Even though Kawhi Leonard wasn't a part of it to get them out of the second round, they still ended up losing to the Phoenix Suns, who eventually became the Western Conference champions, who will lose to the NBA champions, the Milwaukee Bucks. So when you look at this year, this has been a disappointing season for Kawhi Leonard. We knew that he was coming off an ACL injury. We didn't know how long it would take. We didn't know when he was going to come back. It was rumored that he was supposed to come back this year. We didn't know when, what month, what time. He did sign a contract extension, and it didn't really matter that much this year since he still hasn't played since the year will be over next month um, for this season. And then you look at the fact that Paul George, he has missed over 20 some games in a row at this point, and he has no timetable to return either. So it's unfortunate this year that we still don't know if Kawhi Leonard or Paul George are going to return. I still didn't look at them as a championship team, honestly, coming into this year because the unknown certainty of Kawhi Leonard. I thought that they would be a playoff team, rangy, this year, which they are. They eighth is at the bottom. The play-in also is not over, so they're not guaranteed to make it this year. But as of right now, recording this video, they are the eighth seed in the Western Conference, and we'll see what happens during the play-in tournament when it starts. But what I do know is, whew, it's really tough to see what this team is going to do because this year I didn't really look at them as a contender because of the unknown health of Kawhi Leonard. But next year they really do have to figure it out. Kawhi Leonard is already in his 30s, and he's already coming off a major injury, which is the ACL injury. And then it's going to take him some time to build himself back up. And then the NBA is only tougher now. Look at so many contenders this year, not only in the West, but in the East. And teams possibly could be healthier next year compared to how COVID and crazy this year has been. Next season could be totally different. But I do honestly like their roster when healthy, on paper. Kawhi Leonard obviously is great. Paul George is obviously a solid, great player on this roster. Him and Kawhi Leonard haven't really been dominant, honestly, together as a duo in the playoffs the last 2 years. And that's something that I didn't see coming. Paul George has been pretty great before the injury that he had in Indiana. Ever since then, he hasn't really been crazy dominant in the playoffs. Kawhi Leonard has, but he hasn't been healthy enough throughout his entire career, including the playoffs. That's the biggest Achilles heel on Kawhi Leonard's career is health. He's always missing significant, substantial amount of time, whether it's the playoffs. Like last year, they end the second round against Utah, then he goes down, and then once he went down, we knew for sure they weren't going to win a title, which they didn't because they got put out by the Phoenix Suns. And this year, a lot of people, like I said, expected them not to do anything because Kawhi Leonard was going to be out, and we just didn't know when he's going to come back. So that's been the biggest problem with Kawhi Leonard's career. It is good to see that he won the Finals MVP. It is good to see that he was a Defensive Player of the Year. multiple times. It is good to see that he's top 75. But ultimately, he is one of those players that could have been better. He is one of those players that could have been a top 10 player all the time if he was able to stay healthy for a longer period of time, years and more years. Instead, he missed years and years throughout his career. And that's the biggest question with the Paul George Kawhi Leonard duo. They haven't been dominant as a duo. They haven't been dominant ever in a playoff series together. And on top of that, you look at the fact, what is Kawhi Leonard going to be? Like, what is he going to be in his mid-30s trying to carry a franchise to a place that he hasn't carried them yet? This will be his third season next year with this team. And although I do like the roster, I liked the roster the bubble season. And they still lost to Denver in the second round. I liked they roster last year. But if your best player just can't stay healthy in the regular season or even in the playoffs, it's going to be hard to win a title. I'm proud of what the Clippers did. They stayed together. They played hard. They didn't give up. They didn't quit. And they drove that as far as they could go last year against Phoenix. But this year is the same. Ty Lue has done an outstanding job. I thought he was one of the best coaches last year, and I gave him credit for that throughout the playoffs. But, you know, for them to be the eighth seed right now with Powell out, with guys like Kawhi Leonard and Paul George out, it literally shows that, he tries to do the best he can with the talent that he has. He's not the only coach that has done it, but it just shows you that he didn't whine and complain and just say F it. He just kept, coaching, encouraging, and believing in his team, and the results is they keep winning, even without their best players, and that's what you want to see from a great coach, which Ty Lue is, and he is a championship coach with the Cavaliers already. So, hopefully they figure this out. Honestly, I don't have a problem with the roster. I like Robert Covington. I like Powell as supporting cast players for Kawhi Leonard and Paul George. I like, the Zubats and the Terrence Manns. I like the Reggie Jackson addition like I did last year in the playoffs. But, this team is only going to go as far as, Kawhi Leonard takes them. If he's available, they're always going to be in that contender status where if things break right, they can win it. Also, if he gets injured, they ain't going to win nothing, which they haven't, really the last 3 years. But, at the same time, that's just how it is. That's just how it is. They gave Kawhi Leonard an extension. He missed this year like a lot of us thought he would. But they got 3 more years to figure it out. Like I said, Steve Ballmer was happy to get a guy of Kawhi Leonard caliber to be willing to come to the Clippers, to be committed, which he did, sign an extension with them again last offseason. And to me, now it's about, can he deliver? I said that, 2 years ago. Kawhi Leonard feels like he's great. He feels like he's the man, which he has proven before he signed his first contract extension with the Clippers. Now, this is another franchise. This is another organization. This is a different team. Can he do it with the Clippers? He did it with the Spurs in a different role. He did it with the Raptors, under certain circumstances. He was able to get to the finals and get it done. So we gave him credit on that. Now can he do it with the Clippers? The Clippers also is an organization like the Raptors that has never won an NBA championship before, just like the Raptors prior to coming here. So it's tough. It's going to be difficult. It's going to be hard. And it may be harder than ever for Kawhi Leonard because, like I told y'all for years, the NBA is only getting tougher. The talent is getting way better. The teams are getting better because the talent is better. A lot of teams have duos and trios, and they got to bring the A game. And like I said, it's important for Kawhi Leonard to be as healthy as he can be because it's all about titles right now for Kawhi Leonard. Dominance and titles solidify your greatness and your legacy in this league. And if you're not going to be that great and you're not going to be that good, you're not going to be considered in the upper echelon of great players. And if that's what Kawhi Leonard wants to be when it's all said and done, and he's far away from being in that top 15, top 20, top 25. And anybody real would know that, especially if you know basketball. But if he really wants to get there, he needs to have a couple dominant seasons after this year if he wants to put himself in that conversation when he retires. And winning titles is essential to that. And that's something that he hasn't accomplished yet with the Clippers 3 seasons later. So we'll see. Like I said, when he went to the Clippers, it was them or the Lakers. The Lakers delivered. The Clippers haven't, the last 3 years. So we'll see what happens with the Clippers. I'm still more of a wait and see with this because if Paul George is out and Kawhi Leonard's out and they still a playoff team, obviously next year will be totally different. Teams will be different. Franchises, players, and everything could change in the offseason and throughout the season like the trade deadline did this year. But, if Kawhi Leonard wants to be here, if I'm Steve Ballmer, I ain't going to trip. Just like I said with Kevin Durant. If Kevin Durant wants to stay in Brooklyn, I'm not going to have too much of a problem with that. That's one of the best players in the world. So is Kawhi Leonard. And if you have a chance to keep him under contract and he wants to stay, why not try for the seasons that he's willing to stay to win with him? The Clippers, to me, honestly, have done a great job of putting great talent around Kawhi Leonard these last 3 years. Even this year, with Kawhi Leonard not even committed to come back, and he hasn't this entire season, and next month it'll be over, they still have made moves to help him win now if him and Paul George was healthy. So, like I said before, I have had no problems with the Clippers and their organization since Kawhi Leonard has got there, even before with the Lob City team with Chris Paul and Blake Griffin. They have literally changed the entire team throughout the entire year, the last 3 years. They try to put the best talent around Kawhi Leonard and Paul George as the current duo to try to win with them. That's all a GM can do. That's all the owner can do. That's all the coach can do is try to get the best out of a team that he has healthy and able to play. And Tyronn Lue has done it. They didn't have Kawhi Leonard, and they still was able to get to the conference finals without him. They didn't have Kawhi Leonard this year, and they were still able to stay a playoff team to this point, even without Paul George and Kawhi Leonard. So Tyronn Lue has done his job. Steve Ballmer has done his job. The GM, Jerry West and the crew have done their job. And like I said from the beginning, Kawhi Leonard has to do his job and deliver a championship to the Los Angeles Clippers. He felt like he didn't need much. He felt like this was the right decision. He chose Paul George to be his running mate, and he also hasn't got it done since, honestly. And that's just being real. And I know Kawhi Leonard. I love Kawhi Leonard. I respect Kawhi Leonard. I'm a mentor for Kawhi Leonard. I've been knowing Kawhi Leonard before he even became the all-star superstar and franchise player that he is now. And I gave him some buckets to him, too. But I gotta get out of here. That's enough about me. You heard enough about my opinion in this video. But the Clippers, they're going to be a contender as long as Kawhi Leonard's healthy. That doesn't mean they're going to win a title. They're going to be in that conversation. And I feel like everybody around Kawhi Leonard has done their job. Kawhi Leonard's job as the face and the franchise player is to win a title or more for the Clippers. He hasn't been able to do that for the Clippers yet. As long as he wants to stay here, as long as he's committed to staying with the Clippers have done their job. Let's see if Kawhi Leonard can do his job for the Los Angeles Clippers, and we'll see if he can get it done with this team before he's traded or whatever happens in the future. But right now, if he stays, they still in a conversation to win it all if he's healthy. If he's injured and toe up and beat up, it's out of Steve Ballmer and them control. If he's healthy, they're a contender. If he's not, then, they're just going to waste seasons like they did this year. Stay in a relevant team, but not a team that's going to win a title. So, honestly, this year was a waste like we thought. Next year, I also think it's so huge because it will really let us know how far the Clippers are from actually being able to win the title once we see Kawhi Leonard and Paul George back healthy. And that will be the key to see if that duo is enough to bring a championship to the Clippers, which they haven't done these 3 seasons. Next year probably might be the make or break season for this Kawhi Leonard Paul George Kawhi Leonard duo. And if they can't get it done, as we done seen throughout NBA history, you have to find somebody else that can fit better or be better than Paul George has been, if you want to continue to build around Kawhi Leonard to get it done. I mean, if you win a championship, that's their goal. When they got Kawhi Leonard, they haven't been able to do it just yet. Maybe you tweak or change Paul George or other pieces to get another piece to help him, Paul George, and whoever else that person may be, which they have the assets to do now after the Powell and Covenant trade. Maybe they can make a move to have a big three, and maybe that's enough. Or maybe somebody steps up and Kawhi Leonard plays well and Paul George plays well at the same time, and the role players that's better now than it was at the start of the season. You know, all play well and defend like they did last year, but Kawhi Leonard stay healthy, and maybe that's enough to make a run for a title and get it done. I don't know what's gonna happen. I don't know what will happen, but all this stuff is still possible once Kawhi Leonard is healthy and once Paul George is healthy. But like I said, this year was a lost season. Next year will be the real test. And this will be the 4th season that Kawhi Leonard and Paul George have had under contract. So we'll see what happens with this duo and this organization, and what their future will be decided within the next 2 seasons after this one. So Quinn Wade Basketball Analysis signing out. Y'all enjoy y'all day. Enjoy the night. Love y'all. Do y'all thing. See y'all later. I'm gone.